few months ago, I made this button-up t-shirt from a McDonald's bedsheet, and it introduced me to a lot of characters from McDonald's lore. Fry Kid, Hamburglar, this captain guy I can never remember the name of, this ham police officer, sorry, I can't remember his name either, Grimace. But mostly I was enamored by Mayor McCheese with his giant burger head, his little top hat, and his dapper little costume. And the moment I laid eyes on him, I knew I had to dress up as him for Halloween. By the way, if you want an update on this shirt, the marker lines I left on it still hasn't washed out, so there's that. So every year I try to go all out on my Halloween costume because in the past at least that was the only time of year where I could really express my creative prowess. Obviously now that has changed, now that I have this crafting channel. I still want to go super all out for my Halloween costume, and this year apparently I've decided I want to be a giant walking burger. Hi, my name is Emily and I love Halloween.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community featuring thousands of classes teaching everything from painting to sewing to woodworking, all hobbies I have explored on this channel before. With these spectacularly made classes and tutorials, you can find yourself leveling up in your craft or starting a hobby brand new without the worry of feeling lost. And I like that each class is labeled with skill levels and tools you'll need so you can easily navigate the platform and figure out which class is best for you. I, for one, need to brush up on my detail embroidery skills for an upcoming project, and I have been taking Flora's class on how to embroider these adorable woodland creatures to really hone in on how to get nice organic shapes and gradients. Just look at the squirrel. Look at it! Here's where we're at so far. So if you've been meaning to dip your toes into a hobby but didn't know how to start, or just want to access an immense library of resources, the first 500 people to click on my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now back to the mayor. So a few weeks ago I had gotten rid of some old sofas, and on a whim I decided to keep the cushions just in case I needed the foam inside, and lo and behold, the foam would be perfect for the base structure of this costume. And since I apparently didn't deign to explain what my plan actually was, I wanted to make the head first since that is the most important part of the costume, and if I had time I would make the magenta tux, the mayor's sash, and the purple top hat in no particular order. After stripping off the cushion covers, I discovered some mystery stains, which I really hoped wasn't from the time my cat had explosive diarrhea all over the house.
The good news is it doesn't actually smell like anything, so I think it should be fine. This, however, is gonna go in the trash. I'm sorry, I'm not as brave as Makara Tours to reuse this or anything.
And so I began tracing out a bun shape, using my cat's toy as a stencil. As for cutting it, my father very graciously lent me his watermelon knife, and I felt very bad for putting it through the gauntlet of cutting a dirty couch cushion, but it did the trick and left me with a circle.
The edges are quite jagged, but I think it'll be okay once I wrap it in fabric. There are these corners here that the knife had trouble cutting, and I'm just gonna trim that with scissors. It is most definitely not perfect, but I'm hoping that once I wrap the fabric around it, it'll kind of squish down and even out all the ragged edges. And speaking of, this is the fabric I plan to use for the buns. Not this side, but the other side. Nice and blank.
The plan was simple. I traced and cut a big circle out of the fabric with the idea to just wrap around the edges of the foam and hot glue everything in place. But first I decided to test my theory by pinning down the fabric and seeing if it looked any good.
Do we think this is an acceptable amount of wrinkles? Obviously this is just a mock-up, so it's not totally accurate, but I think if I pulled tight enough, I can probably eliminate most of the more obvious wrinkles. Before we do any gluing though, I do want to of course cut out the hole in the middle where my head is gonna go, and cut out the other piece of foam and make sure I have enough fabric for that. The other piece will be the top bun, which is going to be a different shape than this, so I don't know if it's going to take the same amount of fabric. I really hope I have enough of this beige bed sheet for that. So, new-ish plan. One of this is going to become the bun, and the other I'm going to slice this way so that it's bottom bun and patty. The problem will just be figuring out how I'm going to do that. I feel like this is the perfect thickness for my head. I just don't know how to cut it evenly down the middle because the knife is quite imprecise, as you can see from all the saw marks up here. Pondering. Perhaps it'll be easier to cut in half once I cut the hole in the center for my head. Seems like it would work.
To cut the hole in the middle of the foam, I traced this film reel I had from university. The knife had a bit of trouble puncturing the foam, however, so I had to get the process started with a little stabbing action from an X-Acto knife.
So this looks like either a giant angel food cake or maybe a pineapple slice. All right, now I'm going to mark out the cutting point down the center and maybe on the inside as well, just to make sure I get it all right. And hopefully now that the cut depth is a lot shallower, the knife should be able to handle this. And then I gotta figure out how to cut a hole in the top bun without cutting all the way through, because I don't want a hole on the top of my head.
And so I did all of that. I marked out the center of the foam, both on the outside and the inside, once again began the slicing process with an X-Acto knife, and split the patty from the bun as neatly as I could with the melon knife, stopping periodically to make sure the inside cut was centered as well.
I think this is looking even more like pineapple slices with the striations of the cut lines. Also, I'm like covered in sponge dust. That can't be good. So I definitely think I'll need some kind of lining on the inside of the foam, just because I don't want to be breathing in that foam dust the entire time I'm wearing it. Okay, now we gotta figure out how to shape this into a rounded top bun.
So I thought I could do this by simply freehanding with a pair of scissors, but this took forever and was hurting my hand and didn't yield satisfying results, so eventually I got a little smarter and cut out a cardboard template and used the X-Acto knife to cut away much larger chunks of the foam. Casualty. Hold on, I need to get a band-aid. I will always stand Mr. America. Look at this beautiful curve. Alright, I'm gonna spend presumably the next few hours, oh god, ignore that stain, refining these ugly ridges, and I'll see y'all then.
We have achieved bun shape. I think making the template really helped me visualize how much foam I need to remove. It's not totally even, of course. Once you drape a piece of fabric over it, it's all smooth. Although I will say it looks like a delicious Uncle Tetsu's sponge cheesecake. It looks delicious. Honestly, I already look like a hamburger.
To cut a hole in the top bun, I decided to just rip out the foam like a caveman with the aid of my trusty blade, of course.
Here's where we're at, mysterious cheese crater, and with the power of transition, it is now looking like a Jell-O mold. The original plan was to use cardboard because I was afraid this foam would be too heavy, but I think it's alright. Most of the weight is going to be on my shoulders and not my head and neck. There's only about an inch of foam at the very center here, so I think I'm gonna call it good the way it is. Also, I don't understand the concept of hair in foam. Like, how did it get there? How did it get so deep? Has it been there since the day it was manufactured? So my mask is on because I've been sneezing so much. It's been like 2 hours since I was in this room and I could still feel that my throat and sinus is very sensitive. And also because I was looking at the contents of my vacuum cleaner and I was getting a little concerned about all the tiny little microfoams in there. And so I figure I should just be safe and mask up anytime I'm handling the foam super closely. And the mask will stay up until all of the raw edges of the foam are sealed up.
With the scene of the crime cleaned up, I got to wrapping up the buns in fabric, now with a sense of urgency since I didn't want to keep sniffing and sneezing. It's times like this I wish I had a workshop dedicated to crafting, but alas, my bedroom and the storage room will have to do. But anyway, I ironed out the extremely wrinkly fabric, pinned them in place, and then broke out the hot glue. I'm gonna try to neaten these out as well as I can, but I think no matter what I do, it's always going to have some wrinkles just because of the way it's constructed. It'll be a soggy bun. Soggy and wrinkly and sad. To ensure I won't be breathing in the foam dust from the inside, I wrapped the fabric inwards as well and added lining to make it look nice and neat, and most importantly, to make it hazard-free. And then I just repeated this process for the top bun.
I feel like this would be a lot easier if I had stretchy fabric, but unfortunately this unstretchy polyester is all I can get my hands on, so it's just gonna have to be wrinkly. There's no way around it. I forgot to turn the hot glue off and this is what happened. What is that shape it just made? It's like a little mind map.
This looks like a hamburger jellyfish.
Behold, my new costume. All right, let's hot glue this together. It is time for the meat. Let's grab this cheese yellow as well. So for the patty, I have this brown corduroy, looks nice and burnt. And then for the cheese, I have this, just like a scrap fabric that I got at a thrift store. I think it's t-shirt fabric. Isn't it just a perfect melted cheese yellow? Right now, I'm just trying to decide if I should do the fabric horizontally or vertically. This is vertically, and this is horizontally. Let me think about this. I think vertical looks better.
With that figured out, I cut out strips of the corduroy wide enough to cover the outer edge of the patty foam, sewed them together, and hot glued them onto the giant lifesaver. To make the edges lay nice and flat, I gave them the old snippy snip and hot glued those down too.
The patty is finally all cleaned up and pretty. It is covered in little fuzzies everywhere, but that's manageable. The floor, oh my god. Let's try assembling these. Burger! The only thing we have to add is the cheese. Looks delicious. That melty cheese. Let's consider how I'm gonna do this cheese. So based on this reference picture, it seems like the cheese is mostly in the front, and I think it's interesting that you can kind of see a little gap between the cheese and the top bun, which is probably where the suit wearer was seeing out of, so I can replicate that. I don't know if there's any cheese on the back, but if I have any extra fabric, I will put a few corner slices there.
My priority was the front of the burger, so I folded over as much of the yellow fabric as I could to form half a slice of Kraft Single. I marked out where it would taper down to hide where the cheese ended and sewed it all together. Afterward, all I had to do was cut out a hole for my head. It's a burger! Here's a view into the abyss, cheesy heaven, or hell if you prefer. Here's a view at Milo watching me work.
So I made an extra cheese corner out of the fabric that I cut out of the center hole of the cheese, and I'm just going to place it as a test over here. Put the bun on top. It really looks like a Kraft Single. Such a perfect color. I'm going to make one more corner. So I've been pondering how to attach the top bun to the rest of the burger while still being able to see out of here, and I think my solution is just using a bit of this leftover corduroy to make a fabric hinge. So that'll just go in the back here, attach like this, and then this part will attach to the lid so that it can open. Comme ça, so I can see out of here while not having to worry about the bun being completely detached.
Since this would leave some of that exposed foam, well, exposed, which I really did not want, I used some leftover bits of fabric to cover it up. I just glued these down using, you guessed it, hot glue, and I found using a ruler to scrape the fabric flat was quite nice. Definitely preferable to using my bare hands. To cover the cheesy portion, I used some leftover pages from my Assassin's Cabinet video to make a pattern just so I could really optimize what I had left of the yellow fabric. Turns out I had just enough to perfectly fit 2 of these arches. And then there was just more sewing and more gluing.
So here is that hinge, and then here is the extra bit of cheese.
For the hinge, I wanted maximum adhesion since it's going to be load-bearing, so I tried to use contact cement, but the bottle I found was the consistency of booger, and this tiny bottle of shoe glue that I subsequently tried was
so brittle and unsticky that it just pops right off. So I think I'm just gonna revert back to using my trusty hot glue.
Speaking of trouble and gluing, I had trouble gluing the bottom bun to the patty, and it was a problem that even my trusty hot glue couldn't fix.
So I started gluing this, but it was really difficult to reach in here where I didn't glue yet without pulling the previous glue apart. So I really do think I would have to do all the gluing in one fell swoop, and that's the part I'm really worried about because I don't want the glue to start cooling down and drying before I get everything in place. See, the first line of glue I put down is already dry. These glue strands are so thin that I feel like they're not going to be that strong. As it turns out, my dad had this incredibly sticky industrial grade double-sided tape. I'm gonna try this, and let's hope my little Snoopy scissors can handle this.
But the tape turned out to be quite the struggle in itself, as it was so sticky that it refused to let go of the packaging, and I spent way too long wrestling enough strips onto the foam.
So that was an abysmal experience. I do not recommend. This kind of looks like ketchup on the bun.
The tape was so sticky that even the peeling process was unsatisfying, so let's just put the burger together and pretend none of it ever happened. And then it was time to make the face. I drew some templates onto paper, and once I was sure the sizes were good, I traced the eyebrows onto the beige fabric with seam allowances added. I planned to stuff the eyebrows to get that 3D effect, but instead of simply leaving a gap in the stitching to facilitate that, I sewed the edges completely and then cut a hole in the back because the back will be hidden anyway, and I didn't want to deal with ladder stitching a curved edge. Then I stuffed the croissant, did a messy little stitch to hold the back together, and then the eyebrows were born.
And now for the eyeballs, for which I'm gonna make out of felt. Now we gotta make the nose and the cheeks.
For the cheeks, I cut out a fabric circle much larger than the template, gathered the edges, and stuffed it. Then I cut out a piece of cardboard the size of the template, fitted it into the cotton sack, and pulled the edge of the fabric tight around it to create this little cushion. The only thing we have to make now is his nose.
Alright, so I'm going with a similar method as the cheeks, where I have a cardboard template. I have a piece of fabric that I've gathered up the edges of. And to get that 3D pointed nose shape, I have this super condensed ball of cotton that I'm going to place right in the center. And then the rest of the nose will be made out of lighter, more pulled apart cotton so that it will hopefully get compressed more than the big chunk in the middle. And then it'll look like a nice bulbous nose.
So that didn't work. I think I need something even harder than the condensed ball of cotton. Let's see, what do I have around here?
So I made a second pouch. This one's super packed with the cotton, and let's see if that works. Nose? Kind of worked. It unintentionally looks like it has nostrils. Oops, which is perfect because the reference picture also has nostrils. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, so I wasn't going to do it, but surprise nostrils. Now I think we can just glue the facial features on. So here's the mayor with his face all glued on. I think eventually I'll have to do some kind of makeup with some dark brown pastels just to give it that oven-baked look that the reference pictures all have. Other than that, all he needs, for his head at least, is a little top hat, which I have right here. I got this for 75 cents at the thrift store, and I do have magenta fabric to cover it with. And speaking of that, I need to turn all of this magenta fabric into a suit jacket. And since this is basically the same pattern that I used for my floral wedding fit, I think we can just go ahead and roll the montage. With the magenta tux done, I moved on to the sash. the main part of the outfit is done. So the only major thing I have to do is, oh, hey Halloween cat, is to glue the same magenta fabric onto this hat, and I'm really hoping I can just use hot glue for this as well. I just remembered that we also have to make these spectacles, so gotta remember that. Here are the materials I have for these spectacles. 2 golden hoop earrings, golden bracelets in case I don't like the earrings, very small section of gold wire, a chain to connect the glasses to the jacket.
I don't know why I kept putting off the top hat. I think I just had a lot of hot glue fatigue. But anyway, I decided to go with the bracelets for the glasses, and working off of this reference image of antique glasses, I carefully bent the wire into the nose bridge. For the lenses, I used this clear cake box and just cut out some circles. Then I just E6000'd everything in place. To attach the chain to the spectacles, I made a minimalist cowboy hat with the leftover wire and also glued that on. Continuing to procrastinate making the hat, I also made the white flower pinned to Mayor McCheese's lapel. It was made out of these floral trims I happened to have, and I just sewed them together, topped it off with a pearly bead, and glued a pin to the back. And then, there was no avoiding it anymore. I had to make the hat. But then I made the discovery that the hat is actually purple, not magenta.
Quickly swerving. I definitely got plenty of purple fabric.
And then it was just gluing, gluing, more gluing. Sometimes when I rewatch my footage, I can vividly remember what else I was doing at the time. For example, while gluing the hat, I was watching Andor Season 2 and marveling at the fact they made a space language that sounds just like French. I feel like most fantasy languages try to go for an exotic sound to signal that it's, you know, a fantasy language. So it's surprising and kind of refreshing to hear something so clearly inspired by a language like French, and super cool to learn why they chose French specifically. Now I just need to find the time to actually finish watching the show.
I realized that this kind of looks like I'm dressing up as Willy Wonka. I will glue this hat in place once I'm sure everything is finalized to my liking. Hello. Am I done this costume? Well, since I'm apparently done early, there are some could-be-betters that I could tackle. For example, I am really not happy with how exposed this inner raw edge is. I mean, it is sealed and everything, but when I wear it, you can just kind of see the scalloped edge floating there. The reason I didn't do a lining on this is because I didn't have enough of the pink fabric left, but I'm thinking I can maybe use the purple fabric as lining. Of course, I still have to add little blushies on the highest points of his features. I was pondering for the glasses if I should add a pocket for it on this side of the jacket. I guess I have time for it. I think we're gonna start easy and make the pocket. Here is the pocket, and let me test putting the spectacles in it. The glasses have been drying the whole night, so it should be nice and sturdy now, but I'm still a little afraid of how precarious it feels. As long as I don't manhandle it, it should be fine. Ta-da! Now I have to attach the chain to the pocket. Second, we have to add the lining.
To make the lining, I do have to unfortunately take apart the hem.
I finally finished stripping the entire bottom hem. I think it took me quite literally 50 whole minutes. The reason I did it this way to begin with was because I was being lazy. I didn't want to do a lining. Sometimes cheating just ends up putting you in a situation where you have to do more work to fix it. Anyway, I'm gonna trace this bottom hem shape onto the purple fabric. And you're gonna help me, right, Mickey?
So first, I'm going to finish the top edge of the lining. And then I'm stitching the bottom hem right sides together.
I pinned the hem so that it stays nice and flat, and now I'm just going to top stitch it all. I almost certainly don't have enough of this hot pink thread left, so whenever that runs out, I'm just going to switch over to this bright orange, which is definitely not an exact match, but I think it'll be close enough. Hopefully you won't be able to tell the difference.
Look at this, almost done. Now look at this, also almost done. Let's hope I can make it. We did it! Oh, look how close we got.
The edges look so much cleaner now. I'm so glad I decided to do this.
All I had to do was stitch up the sides and secure the lining with some heat and bond. And then it was time to give the mayor a nice oven-kissed glow-up.
So I was testing some pastels on this extra bit of eyebrow here. Strangely, it didn't really work, but you know what did work? Eyeshadow. Alright guys, we're about to give Mayor McCheese a makeover. Let's start with a little bronzing action. A light hand is definitely going to help on the apples of the cheeks. I think this is a nice little blush. Now we're moving on to contouring the nose. We're going to round the center of it a bit, just to give it a bit of definition. Alright, now let's do the eyebrows. Once again, we're only dusting the higher areas. Great, now the camera is making it look super ghastly and gross. I promise, in real life it's a nice warm glow.
And after that, all of that, it is finally time for the final reveal.
So, what do we think? I am so incredibly happy with how this came out. Look at his big ol' eyes. Let me put him down somewhere. Alright. I am honestly shocked that this even worked out. For a while there, I was a little worried that I wasn't gonna finish this on time, but I did it. I am mostly super happy with everything. The burger is a little wrinklier than I originally planned it to be, but honestly, I think it's fine. It doesn't really bother me that much if I look at it as a whole costume. What else? What else? Oh, the spectacles. I took it out of my pocket because honestly walking around with it, jangling in my pocket was really annoying, but I sewed a little clip to the inside of my pocket so that whenever I do want to whip out my spectacles right here, I could just clip it back on and clip, like so. I'm really happy with how crisp the words came out, by the way. I was planning to use vinyl for this at first, but I think the felt worked out really well. There are a few things missing from this outfit. For example, I haven't been able to find any yellow gloves, so these black leather gloves that I already owned was the only thing that would really work. Honestly, anything that can cover up my human hands and not be too distracting would probably be fine. And also, my pants, I'm just wearing black dress pants because I also haven't been able to find the right colored stripe fabric. It was just such a specific color. But honestly, I think there's enough going on with the costume that it's not missed anyway. Let me bring Mayor McCheese back for the goodbye. Beep, boop, beep, boop. I hope you had a happy Halloween, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm not sure what that will be yet, but regardless, I'll see y'all there. Bye! Meow.